Good day, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural and very first edition of the Value Analysis Expert Series podcast. My name is Skender Darity, and I'm honored to be the host today, as I feel like I'm sitting amongst I'm kind of like the paparazzi of value analysis right now. I'm sitting amongst three kind of celebrities in the value analysis world. It's really exciting. I wish we were in person, then I'd really geek out. But virtually, I guess I'll do so in this way. But this is really, really exciting. This is something that's long overdue. The Value Analysis Series, Value Analysis Expert Series is intended to be a resource for suppliers, for hospital administrators, for clinicians, for all those that just are wondering, what is value analysis? How does it impact me? How can I help value analysis, and how can value analysis help me? Well, that's what our three experts are going to do today. And moving forward. So with that, I just want to have an opportunity to briefly introduce our panel of celebrities / experts, starting with Barbara Strain, Terry Nelson, and Janelle Robinson. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for making the time today. I'm very excited to get everything kicked off with you.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
We're excited.
I'm really excited. I've had a lot of coffee and I'm pumped up here. So with that, let's start off with some simple discussions to get everybody going. As we record this, we are literally days into a new year, 2025. And hopefully when we record episode 100 a couple of years from now, we'll come back to this time frame and reflect upon the comments that you're about to give right now. But as we start in this January 2025, what is value analysis today? And how is it differed from the value analysis of prior, if at all? Terry, let's start with you.
I think it is much different. Over the course of time that all three of us have been doing value analysis, which is well over 20 years, it's changed a lot. And it's no longer just about a contract and the obligation to a contract, but it's actually the management of a product from entry into an organization by the supplier who's sharing information, to us using the product, to us removing it, to us looking at the best outcomes for that product. And I think that's really important for value analysis. You're not just doing the contract anymore. You really are looking at the efficiency and the function of product to improve clinical outcomes for patients wherever they are, whether they're in acute care or non-acute care settings.
Love it. How about Barbara? How would you like to add to that?
Well, to add what Terry's going to say, rather than saying, I like what she said, value analysis has been, value analysis has been, I know. Value analysis has been recognized even more so in institutions that actually embrace it. Sometimes it takes a long time to do that transition from they're just going to look at new products and make sure that it's okay to bring them in versus really looking at the whole landscape. They're the ones that have those connections with every department in the hospital, whether they're clinical or non-clinical. And I think COVID just helped to prove that, because they were there and they were the ones that helped make those connections to make good, quick decisions about products when they weren't available, et cetera. So we've risen a lot since then.
Love it. And Janelle, how about you?
I really see the evolution of value analysis. When I first came in onto the scene, I guess when I moved from clinical over to the business aspect, that low-hanging fruit was still available, that cost for cost. And there was, I think, more of a focus on cost, where over the years, the patient has become more centered in every decision that is made, whether it's bulk contracting and how it affects the patient, how it affects the hospital operations. But I think most importantly is that 360-degree view with those look-back reviews of outcomes. outcomes are first and foremost in the majority of the decisions that are made, because that low-hanging fruit is now gone. That widget for widget that, let's cut costs. And I have seen it over the years where most of the initiatives that come forward or the products that are available aren't necessarily cost savings anymore, those hard cost savings. So the value then lies in the outcomes that are achieved by the adoption of the product. So it's just a little different spin on how things are looked at it. And we've kind of gone beyond that low-hanging fruit.
Well, I think Janelle hit it right on the head, because we have now looked at total, whether you call it value-based care or whatever, it's that total, because we've been known to spend a lot more money on actual products, but the return on that investment improves that value overall.
I think the other thing that Janelle added, which I really appreciate, was this evolution to having a clinical background, a more active. I've really seen a shift where more value analysis colleagues come from the nursing or another procedural area, but they have a more robust clinical background, which helps them to see this whole picture of patient care across the continuum.
So I love that dynamic of talking as patient-centered, right? And it's really why we're all in healthcare. I don't care who you are. We should all have that patient-centric focus. However, I want to take a step back, because we did talk about widgets, right? And technology. And ultimately, value analysis comes to evaluating the value outcomes of various technologies that come there. So I want to come from a supplier perspective when I ask this next question. It's 2025. Value analysis has been around for a little while, right? I mean, it's not like it was invented last year. So tell me, why in 2025 do we think the supplier community remains equally confused about the approach to value analysis? Barbara, you're laughing. What do you think?
I'm laughing because no matter how many times Terry, I, and Janelle have been in front of suppliers or audiences at meetings and things, the question kind of comes up is because every institution that they call on is different. They might even not call it value analysis. So to navigate it, they're having a hard time, and they continue to have a hard time who do I talk to? Sometimes they can't get to who they need to talk to. So they have to figure out how the workings of each of the institutions are and get to know them. They can't just approach everybody as if they're vanilla and it's the same everywhere.
Janelle, you had something you were going to say about that too.
Well, yeah, I think just adding on to that, the way different hospitals look at things are differently. They're all different. There are strategic initiatives, there are strategic plans that also come into play. And while value analysis may have been around a long time, surprisingly, it's not adopted at every hospital across the United States.
Let's adopt it when they're having financial problems. Exactly. We've seen that. When anybody's having financial, I'll get a value analysis person in there. Sorry, Janelle, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's what I think happens a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, let's start looking at this. And they start looking at the supplies. Then they start looking at standardization. Then they start looking at contracts. Now, Terry, Barbara, and I have been in the game long enough where we've now evolved to looking at the outcomes. So we have a little bit more experience. I think it's just that natural evolution of value analysis. Everybody has to start somewhere, but not everyone is on the same plane.
So, Terry, I want to talk about something you just said there. You said a lot of times that the catalyst is we're in trouble financially. We need to do this. So then in that regard, why do they need value analysis? Why isn't it just cost cutting?
Yeah. Because it's not just the finance department that looks at that, because that's a big part. When the numbers doing the balance sheet, finance gets involved and it says, you're spending too much here. But you have to look at the outcomes and the patient population. I mean, this is the care that we give in the United States, right? That patients are actively involved and they want the best care they can get, but it's got to achieve the right outcomes. So they'll get their insurance to pay for it, and that whole cycle of activities that have to occur. And I think value analysis is positioned to understand who all the players are. I think that's a big important part is when we look at it, we look at the suppliers, and you talked, and Barbara had mentioned too about the suppliers and their relationship, not knowing the differences about us. I think of large aggregate groups, they're trying to do standardization across multiple states and or countries in some cases. So how do they do that effectively with a supplier? But we need to look at all of the different components that impact the care that a patient's going to get by an organization. And that's what value analysis does. They look across the continuum.
For right now, and it's going to continue for another 15, 20 years, knock on wood, just because of my age or maturity, is everything is a lot of chronic care. And so how do you really approach that? So longer stays in a hospital because it's not being controlled in their communities and environment the way they are. So there's just a lot of acuity and long lengths of stays and those sorts of things. And so value analysis, and Terry hit the nail on the head when she talked about how Janelle mentioned clinical. You understand those things, and it's not just looking at a widget and doing another widget. You have to look at the whole picture, whether it's healthcare acquired infections, chronic diseases, et cetera.
So I'm going to stick with the suppliers for 1 second, and I want to transition to other parties. For the suppliers, okay, I hear what you're saying. Every hospital is its pretty own little snowflake. It has their own ways of doing things. I can appreciate that. If I'm a supplier in 2025, there has to be some fundamental foundations, right, that I need to understand just approaching so I can speak the same language as you. Yes, I understand, California may speak a different language than Georgia, et cetera, but there's fundamental components to that. And so what are some of those fundamental components from the supplier perspective that they should know and bring and approach those? Janelle, what do you think first?
To me, I think it's really understanding the entire patient journey and where their proposed product fits within that, and really taking a look at what happens before or what the current standard of care is. Insert product. What are the theoretical outcomes and how does it affect not only the patient, but the operations? And if you're talking to, say, a large healthcare organization versus a smaller standalone, it may affect them operationally differently. They may have different patient populations. So I think Barbara alluded to it, where you can't go in with a vanilla approach. Each customer has different needs, has different challenges, has a different patient population, is in a different metropolitan area, different payer mix. So all of these things need to be looked at from a 360-degree view versus just, I have this blue pen that's better than this red pen. But go beyond that. You need to tell me why and how does it fit in with my patient population or their customers' patient population.
So Janelle, let me just raise a question to that. So I think that's awesome. But how about when a supplier, because this is what I hear from suppliers, it's all common, it's all great and good, but then I talk to a common spirit, which has hospitals stretching across the land, Kaiser, Mayo, whoever it is, then, we're not necessarily talking about such regional dynamics. We're talking about something that has a large platform. Mm-hmm. What do those suppliers need to know?
The population health impact. I think when you start talking about different demographics and different, patient mixes and disease processes, you really have to understand the population health impact of what the current standard is, what the challenges are, and how the proposed product plays into that and can ultimately improve patient-centered outcomes.
I wanted to add to that. I agree with Janelle and what Barbara said too. The other thing is understanding that as providers of care, we want to standardize our care, no matter where it is going out. So for a supplier to go to our individual organizations in different states and bring their product in is not as effective as going to wherever the organization is identified as their core, their corporate, their foundation, whatever term they use, and start with the leadership there, both clinical and in supply chain. Because supply chain is going to have a big impact on whether or not your product comes into an organization. So that is, the suppliers have to understand where the leadership is and start there with the clinical, not do the one-off with Dr. A or Dr. B at a smaller clinic who loves my product and wants to bring it in. You have to come to the core and help us work through that.
So my viewpoint is, and it kind of dovetails to the end of this conversation, is that you have to build relationships as a supplier with those internally at organizations who's doing what and how and things. And what that helps with, when you go to, say, you mentioned, common spirit, if you go to the leadership and they might have something at that corporate level, that leadership will understand we're trying to do, oncology care in these particular centers in these states. We're trying to do diabetes control. We're trying to do cardiology. Build on those relationships and what you can offer in those situations, that then they understand that you know what you're talking about, but they know where their populations and things are. So they'll help to drive where that can go and standardize if you're knowledgeable in the value of what your product and company can do. Because it's not just about the product, it's that service and ongoing needs assessment and being there when needed in things.
My mind's blown. It sounds like you guys are actually asking suppliers to do preparation and research. I think this is too complicated. I think we need to move on. Let's talk about the clinicians, another party in this. Okay, so I sit in a very fortunate position. I talk to a lot of clinicians, and when they see value out of value analysis, it comes from when they get with the product that they originally wanted and put up there. Where they don't see value out of value analysis is, I wanted this product and some committee told me I can't have it. Help me understand and help them understand. Forget me, I'm a nobody. Help them understand, why is value analysis, quote unquote, of value to them, Barbara?
So thank you for going on me first, because I was chomping at the bit. That means that they don't have like an inclusive value analysis type program if they don't understand it. So you have to make sure that when you're building the value analysis program, which I've helped actually a couple of provider organizations do over the last few years, from my experience and doing a variety of things, but you've got to be inclusive. And those people that kind of complain sometimes are the best people to get as your, sort of key opinion leaders, and you rally around it, because once they learn and understand and have a good experience, then they're going to champion, this is really a good process, and we're going to really do it. So you have to be inclusive and not just shut off folks internally or whatever. And it has to be something that your leadership communicates, here's how we're going to do business and why it's good for us to do business this way.
I think one of the greatest mistakes that are made is when a clinician brings forward an initiative or a request for something, and the thought is siloed. And then value analysis gets involved and starts digging deeper into the numbers. What other clinicians are performing this procedure? How does it impact them? Are they even interested? Are we banking on the 80-20 rule here, or just who are we serving, and whose life is it going to make easier, or who wants it? And so for a clinician champion to bring something forward, it's really important to understand, I think, how value analysis thinks and analyzes it. And it's not on an individual clinician basis. It's on a service line basis most of the time.
Yeah, I would agree. I would think that's a lesson we learned from COVID. You know, I had a lot of physicians who would call the team and say, I need this type of product. I said, we can't get this for whatever reason. Here's the things. Here's what you've identified as the parameters, the characteristics that you need in the product. Here's what we can get. And we were more successful in developing those relationships because they understood the limitations that we had regarding availability of certain products that were happening at that time just because of shortages that were going on. So building that relationship goes back to what both Barbara and Janelle were saying is you have to trust us. You have to build a relationship internally as well, not just with the suppliers, but with the clinicians as well. And then, and that's hard. That is hard, and it depends upon your organization. If you are employees of the organization, I do see differences having worked with smaller facilities, or if you're contracted, your approach may have been a little bit different. And I think that's ownership on the provider side. We got to get our act together. We have to look at products. We have to be objective about how we look at them. And then one thing I wanted to say was the backpack or the value analysis tool that has key characteristics that a supplier should understand. And that's how they should start their approach of identifying their product and what it can achieve for us, for the clinic.
I'm going to put a pin in that idea because I want to come back to that in 1 second. But what I want to ask before we get there is, because we keep talking about products, keep talking about technologies, widgets, throw any noun in there. We keep saying it. Let me ask a question. Does value analysis change the approach and process as it relates from class 1 to class 2 to class 3, or clinical commodities to PPI products, PPE products? Sorry, I'm all over with my PPs. That doesn't sound good either for a podcast. But we all know where I'm going. My physician preference items. So with that, does value analysis modify itself according to the class of product?
No.
No. Okay.
I think it's a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think there's different levels of scrutiny, but the core principles of how something is evaluated are the same regardless of if it's a latex glove or a cardiac implant.
Yeah. Because Janelle and Terry are both 100% off. The answer is we use the same steps. However, what needs to be collected at each of those steps can vary. So the checklist becomes longer. For example, if you're working, say, in biologics, you've got to answer questions. You ask questions about, Joint Commission and checking, can you record all these other information and what's your recall process and a variety of things. So your checklist just grows and expands depending on what the product is. And sometimes we have spent more time on something that costs less than $1 than on something that might cost $40,000 each. It just depends on what it is.
Interesting. Terry, you want to add something to that?
No, I just want to agree with Barbara because I haven't agreed with her as fully as I do want to agree with her now.
Perfect.
Thank you, Terry.
Good. We'll keep track of that. I'm going to tally. That's twice you've done it. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Terry, you raised something about this ubiquitous nebulous backpack. What is that?
So, and I use value analysis pack. I use it as a pack, and I hate the term pack, but it's actually a tool that uses, I think I prefer it to be 1 page or less, that tells us all the information about your product. And Janelle and Barbara both have referred to this. Why do I need your product? What is your product going to do for me? What are the outcomes that we have? I don't need glossies. I need a 1-sheet document that will give me as much information regarding those. What are the outcomes your product should achieve? Who else is using your product? Have you had any recalls? Those are questions. And there is a standard tool within value analysis professionals that I think even you don't have to be part of an organization. I think almost everybody encourages a supplier to use this format. And we internally also use that as our checklist when we're looking at products and different items that we're going to use in the organization.
So coming back to our pretty little individual snowflake conversation from before, how does a supplier use the backpack across the spectrum? Barbara.
Well, here's how I sort of inform my clients is you do it basically the same way, in a way Terry said. You make it short, sweet, but you have to have those key points and things. Then when you present it, you'll learn that they may want more or however that's going to work out. And you adapt to that. You're flexible, but you don't go in with, we're going to now make an 1.5-hour presentation and we're going to, talk about when we first developed our company 150 years ago. No, you've got to just come in as succinctly. No one has a lot of time, but you will soon learn the cadence of how they want initiatives to go forward. But you have to give them enough to get to that next step because they don't know every product out there and they don't know how to do all these initiatives and what the benchmarking may be and all these other things. And you're coming in there because you need to know about your product or your service and what it can do for people who use it. So you learn, you adapt.
Janelle, would you agree?
I would agree. I look at, VACPAC or whatever term you want to use as the outline. Think of it as the outline. And then as the supplier or innovator or whoever it is that is the expert on this particular product or is closest to it, then has a whole sidebar of, what is the evidence? What are all of these other elements that go into the decision making? I don't need it up front. We've all said nobody has time to read a 10-page, 12-page and sift through it. But if you give me, I'm a little more lenient. Terry likes a 1-pager. I'll put up with up to 2.5, 3. But keep it high level. Keep it very, very high level. And I think what's most important and where a lot of suppliers fall off the mark is not being fully honest or understanding of what the current state of affairs is for the intended patient population. It's okay if you're like somebody else. It's okay if you don't save money, if you can demonstrate value, downstream value, or in other things and meaningful outcomes. Not just saves time on a procedure. That doesn't tell me anything. As that value analysis coordinator, I'm going to dig deep into that. And I am going to figure out what is my current, length of procedure. You are going to save me, or you propose to save me 3 minutes on a 40-minute procedure. That's not impactful. So as a supplier, they can be very open and honest with themselves on what their meaningful outcomes are. And that kind of helps cut through some of the fluff right on the onset.
Yeah. I think it goes back to it. Just wanted to underline what you'd said there, Janelle, a couple of times is goes back to what our lessons were that we learned through COVID is that document needs to be electronically provided with hyperlinks to, either the studies that they've done, what kind of outcomes you've seen. We don't need to pack it any longer. The days that we did things less electronically, that's what we'd ask for. But now it has to be done electronically with hyperlinks in it because we send it out to our other colleagues who may not have been there at the presentation or have not need to have a reference that they can then go in and look at the detail that they want to make sure a product will achieve certain outcomes from. So that's really important.
In a non-confidential format, please. So it can be shared and passed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
one of the things that's...
Go ahead, Barbara. One
of the things it's really important is that you provide, here's the current way that usually products in this category or services in the category are used today. That way, it level sets the conversation so that already the value analysis or other folks around the screen are saying, I wonder how we do it today. Do we have those outcomes? What do we use? Because we don't know everything that goes on and we have to go dig it out. So provide enough information so we can do our homework in the provider organization, and then do it in a way that you're saying, in the future, if you adopted our product or our service, here are those key points that we have improved or that overall outcome improves, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that, I call mine a guide rather than a backpack or whatever. And mine is like an A3 sheet of paper that you can fold in half. So it's 4-side, but you get the sort of the point.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize what you'd said there too, Barbara, is presenting your information, not creating conflict. Because at times I've had suppliers come in and say, you have failed in this category and our product will help you. And anyone around the room has not heard how it's going to help you. They heard how we failed. And as healthcare providers, we don't want to fail. We have enough losses within our patient population. We don't want to cause those. So that's the other thing, that when you're presenting your information, I just love the way you had said that. Present it in, here's what we're hoping to achieve, here's what we have, and here's what our future looks like, and not pointing us as we, and when I say us, I'm talking about providers, as we failed to achieve something.
Yeah.
So my key takeaways from this discussion are: A, you want people to prepare. That's asking a lot. 2, you want people to take 18 slides down to size 2 font and squeeze it in, do a shrink to fit onto a one piece index card. So maybe you can read it with a magnifying glass.
Front and back.
And then the third part is just making sure that we are keeping it positive. Okay. So
makes sense to me.
I think I've solidified this
you're close.
thing.
Can I add one more key?
Please.
Have patience with the process. Mm-hmm. It is a process.
I like it. Good. Yeah. All right. Well, fortunately, I don't think we've told everything about everything value analysis. There's still so much more to cover. That's why I'm so excited about this series and having each of you. And so with that, with just because we're going over time here, I guess what I'll ask each of you is to kind of tell the audience, what is the Value Analysis Expert Series? What can they expect out of this and future discussions? If they join today, what can they expect when they keep joining in subsequent calls? So Janelle, why don't you start it off with that? In very succinctly.
Oof, boy. Okay.
Size too fun. Man,
I know. Oh, the pressure. No, I think the audience can expect a collaborative guidebook.
Like that. Terry?
Yeah, a dialogue. I see this as a platform to have a dialogue about what's working, what's not working, and how we can improve it. So I love the idea of the guidebook, but also to realize we know that things have not always been as successful as we'd like them to be, but they could be if we at least talk to one another and what our needs are.
And Barbara.
And what I like to lean on is my sort of terminology lately is, how do we all create value together? And we define what that is, and then we go figure out how do we create it together.
I love it. I'm hooked. I'm going to be a listener. I'm also going to be a talker. So I'm excited to listen to not only this one, but all the future ones. I know I have a lot to learn. I can tell you right now, the entire healthcare population has a lot to learn from this group. It is an honor to be here with you ladies and to be educated by the true experts in this discipline. I'm excited to help further healthcare and watch each of you kind of impart your knowledge on everybody. So with that, and the entire audience, we thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Please tune in to subsequent podcasts because, as I said, these celebrities, these value analysis celebrities, are worth listening to. They are the people that you want to talk to, and they're also going to give you the keys to success, and that's what everybody's looking for. So thank you to the entire audience, and happy 2025.
Thank you for the opportunity. See ya.
Thank you.